Hello, my name is Jodi Reeb, and I want to welcome you to my studio. I've been a full-time artist in Minneapolis for the past 27 years and a member of the Traffic Zone Center for Visual Art for the last 17. I want to give you a tour of my studio and go through artworks that I have currently on view. My artwork is nature-based, and at times I'm working with encaustic paint, and more sculptures I'm using aluminum and soldered steel wire. When I discovered encaustic painting, I loved it so much that I decided that I wanted to start teaching. So I've been teaching now for about 6 years in my studio, and I love the process that people discover it for themselves because it's so forgiving, and the textures that you can create with the translucency are just so seductive. So now let's take a walk through my studio, and I want to just tell you a little bit about individual pieces and how my process unfolds. The paintings behind me are a series of circular paintings consisting of encaustic and metallic paints on acrylic panels. And what I love about this series is that it allows me to collaborate with the space and really change it up depending on what the area is that I have to fill, whether it's corporate or residential kind of settings. So with encaustic paint, you can really push the transparency, and that's kind of shown on this larger painting, as well as the opacity, which is meaning that the paint is more solid. And I'm always working with texture and kind of between smooth and texture with this encaustic paint. My work is nature-based and sort of gives me this big umbrella then to explore different mediums, whether it's sculpture or painting. And with this series, I sort of think of them as like seeds blowing in the wind. This sculpture is probably my newest work. I started making this about 3 years ago, and I had the idea to use the pleated aluminum. And what I was after was creating an organic form that wasn't really specific to something, but depending on the color that I painted, I get a lot of feedback that they're kind of like could be petals, or this one I kind of think about as maybe air or kind of blowing in the wind also. So each individual piece is formed, and then I'm attaching it to a backing substrate of the same material. And in this way, it sort of is a repetition of form and a meditation, which is kind of inherent in all of my work. About 5 years ago, I started working with tissue paper and my photographs. This is taken with a camera that I originally had when I was 18, and I sold it, but then I wanted to find the same exact camera again. So this is an image that I took double exposure, and I'm taking 2 images on the same frame, so that I take a photograph and then I trick the camera into thinking I'm advancing the film, but I'm actually not. And so I'm taking these images right on top of each other, and then using the beeswax to sort of enhance that softness that's happening. I'm printing on inkjet and using tissue paper through the printer so that when I'm using the encaustic paint, it's actually permeating the tissue and sort of making it a layers collage. This painting is called Radiance, and I took these photographs of pollinator-friendly plants at the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum. And what I wanted to do was really talk about the challenges that pollinators face, as well as combining it with the beeswax paint that I'm using. So these sculptures are literally seeds blowing in the wind, and I started working with soldered steel about 4 years ago, and I wanted to dip paper into encaustic paint, and then I was going to put this around the armature. But once I did that, I really realized that I wanted to just keep the forms by themselves and appreciate the shadows that they create. Thank you so much for joining me in my studio, and I look forward to connecting with you during the workshop. I also want to let you know that I do online mentoring, as well as connecting with you via Zoom if you wanted to get some support for your own work, your studio practice, even sales and marketing.